Hi everyone, Jenna here. Thank you so much for joining us. Earth Day is this Friday, April 22nd. At Million Marker, we are a huge fan for an advocate for environmentally friendly lifestyles. We test people for plastic chemicals, not only in hope of improving their health, but also bettering the environment. Plastic isn't going away anytime soon. So we must do things in our everyday lives to help foster a healthy planet. That's why we're really, really excited today to be joined by Heather Guidice of Kona Compost. So Kona Compost Company is a food scrap collection service opening in Buck County, Pennsylvania. She's also the co-founder of Bucks County Seed Share. So there are many, these are some really, really amazing initiatives. So we can't wait to hear more from Heather. She just sent.
Hey there, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, yes, perfect. Thank you so much
Awesome.
for joining today. We're like
Yeah.
super, super excited.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you being called a compost queen, food waste lady, soy nerd, wormer wrangler, so many titles. Like, so tell us a little bit about your background and why you started the Kona Compost.
Sure. Yeah. So my background is actually in the design and photography world. So I spent the majority of my career directing creative teams, and I guess my last office position was as a photo studio director. Um, so in the office, folks started bringing me their compost. I come in, talk about gardening, and bring in some vegetables for folks, tell them, hey, I've compost, and I would get, hey, do you want my banana peels? Can I drop my orange peels off at your desk? Yeah, sure, why not? So, so what ended up happening is I went, oh, okay, like there's an idea here. People want to do the right thing. They really do, and they don't want to compost themselves though. But
Mm-hmm.
I do, and I can help them. And so that kind of gave this, aha light bulb moment that went, all right, maybe I should just offer this as a service. So at the time I was living in King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, so the next county over. And my wife and I moved to Bucks County. She was working in Manhattan, and I didn't find a food scrap collection company here. And I said to myself, all right, I had actually gotten laid off from that job, which was one of those blessing in disguise. Is that I said, do I want to go back to the office, or let me pursue this idea that I've been kicking around in my head for almost 10 years? And so in 2019, I started Kona Compost, and it's grown since then, and it's been very exciting. I have around 200 folks, families or households that compost with me, and it just continues to grow from there. So, it gives me a lot of hope and reassurance that many more people want to join the movement of compost, and it's a great time that we're talking actually because Earth Day is on
Right.
Friday, and so what a nice way to kind of end April is do something great for the earth. And composting is just such a great choice if folks are ready to do so.
That's amazing. So about like 40% of food is like wasted in America and obviously generating 108 billion pounds of food waste. Like, why is there so much food waste?
That's it's a deep question. So I guess there are a couple things. And I guess, so one of them is going to be the overproduction, right? So when you walk into a grocery store, it's kind of normal to expect everything of every single variety to be there, right? We're spoiled. Like, let's face it, we're a very spoiled country, having so many choices. So you have the overproduction of food, and you have food that spoils. You're gonna have food that having shipping issues. Maybe it didn't make it in time, and things have an expiration date, and I'm going to say that kind of lightly. It could also be a bit of a result of some poor planning, along the way, or some unforeseen issues. The one thing I actually kind of also like touch on is that there is also an expectation that our produce looks like it came out of a photo shoot, right? Our produce needs to be perfect, so to speak. And there's so much that gets wasted because this carrot was ugly, but it's still really delicious. And that's why companies like Misfits Market and a couple of others have taken advantage of that opportunity. But it's still a problem. And food tastes delicious, whether it's you've got an ugly heirloom tomato or this perfectly round red tomato. It's the heirloom probably actually tastes better. But those are kind of a couple of reasons why we have food waste. And I also think from a consumer perspective, because we were able to buy more at any given time. If you eat something and we're like, that wasn't too good, or I'm not hungry, or they just, if we just forget about it, it goes to the back of the fridge, we toss it out, and we don't think twice about what's next. And, I think that's something that, we need to kind of change the perspective of food and say, okay, this apple that I'm eating, how did it get to me? What kind of value does it have? And what does its afterlife look like? I'm really trying to change the perspective and shift the mindset of folks to see that anything that we eat, whether it's an apple or eggs or even a cupcake, right? All compostable, all have value after you're done. And we're trying to transform that into something that's positive.
Absolutely. You kind of brought up a really good point, which leads to my next question is, could you talk about like the environmental issues associated with food waste?
Yeah, there's a ton. So the biggest one is going to be, your greenhouse gases. So the USDA says that, if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest producer of greenhouse gases after the US and China. That's an enormous amount of food and an enormous amount of greenhouse gases that are being emitted. We grow our food, compost helps fertilize it. So, when we're wasting food, right, we're wasting, our time, our energy, our transportation, our production. And all of that is going to have an impact, one way or another on our environment. We kind of have to think about how food gets to us. And, if we just go, we'll just toss it away, right? Most people think like, hey, it decomposes in the landfill, no problem. But you've tied it up tight, probably in a plastic bag, and you sent it to the faraway land of away, which is the landfill. And it just sits there. When on the contrary, you send it off to the compost pile, and it's going to break down and create this beautiful, nutritious soil amendment as opposed to greenhouse gases. So that I think is like the number one issue is really those greenhouse gases, which can absolutely be avoided.
Yeah. So people should really think about the life cycle cost of food, where it's filled and then how does it, digest, and then how does it turn into something better, the circular system, rather than just like, hey, I can just like toss it and not thinking about anything else.
Yeah, there's always, there's a consequence to not really completing that full cycle. And it's, when you throw food away, it doesn't go anywhere good unless you're composting.
So for those who don't know, what is composting? How can it help with food waste?
Sure. So composting, the act of composting is taking either your food waste or your yard waste and combining that with a carbon source. So your food waste is nitrogen. Your yard waste could potentially be nitrogen or carbon. And so you're going to combine those two together, along with adding oxygen and water, and you're going to put it in and there's multiple ways to do it, but you could put it in a pile, you could put it in a bin, you could feed it to worms. And what's going to happen is that you have these behind the scenes workers, and those are your microorganisms, your bacteria, and your fungi. And they're going to really work hard to break your food waste down, right? A good compost pile is going to heat up. And that means your behind the scenes workers are really, really going to town and breaking things, down into more digestible parts. So, what ends up happening is that your compost pile heats up and it cools down over the course, and depending on it, what kind of volume you have. But in my case, over the course of a couple of weeks, it breaks down into an unrecognizable form, right? So those banana peels and those avocado peels, they look now like this nice soil. And so anyhow, so it kind of goes along the process of breaking things down. And at the end of a couple months or, a quarter or so, the result is this really great, sweet smelling, I'm going to say like chocolatey, crumbly cake, it's great to use in the garden. So, I mentioned worms too. So folks who are interested in doing that, kind of same thing. You're going to create this nice environment for red wigglers, which are going to be your composting worms. And those are generally kept in a bin. They're great for an apartment setting, or you could do it, at a much larger scale. And you're going to feed them food waste or semi-broken down compost, and they're going to process that. The worms are super effective of, ingesting, soil and other particles and breaking that down. The end result is basically their worm castings, which is, again, a nice fertilizer for your plants.
We actually have a worm bin here, like outside, and
Nice.
the worms, they love coffee grind. Coffee grind is like the best thing. They just like digest in no time. I was so amazed.
Yeah, it's for me, it's in the fall, pumpkins are a big hit. Watermelons too. So yeah, they're really they're so much fun. I'm happy to hear that you guys have a worm bin.
Yeah. So how can someone start composting at home?
So the first thing is what you're going to do is understand your space, right? So I always tell people, at least here in Pennsylvania, composting happens in the winter when it snows. So where do you want to put your compost bin? And then figure out what type of compost bin you can have. There's enclosed bins such as tumblers, and that's good for anybody, but especially folks that have a smaller space. For folks that have a larger space, there are what we call 3-bin systems. So it's 3 cubic feet by 3 cubic feet by 3 cubic feet. And it just gives you a lot of flexibility to compost a lot. And it's great for yard waste too. There's, other bins that are enclosed that have a lid. And those are good, again, if you have some space. But so select your method of composting, or if it's worms, choose that. Get your appropriate bin. And then comes down to a matter of developing a habit. And, I tell people if you, we're all used to putting our food scraps in the trash, but if we turn this way and put them in the compost bin, it's just a matter of repetition and getting used to the fact that you're not going to put your food scraps in the trash any longer. One thing that's going to be really helpful is if you have a countertop bin and you make that part of your cooking process, where you have something like a stainless steel pail that sits right on your counter. It's accessible, it's visible, and you put your food scraps in there and then transfer that out to your outside bin or to your worm bin, and just keep on repeating it. It becomes second nature once you've done it, at least for a full month, and be gentle with yourself. You might forget in the beginning, and that's okay. You're going to develop that habit along the way. So I would say just, choose your location, choose your bin, and just have at it.
So what do you do with the compost then after, after it become soil and then you just put it back in your garden, or is there any other thing you can do with it?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people just put it right back in their garden. And that doesn't just have to be a vegetable garden. It can fertilize your flowers. If you're planting, let's just say you had a space in your lawn that you needed to repair, you could use compost and put your grass seed right in there. I like to make compost tea, and I do that. I actually, so you brew it, and I use that as a foliar spray and a root drench for my plants, and it's just another way for them to uptake the nutrients. Um, you could be nice and give it to a neighbor if you have too much. But and you can use it in house plants too. So if you have the space, if you have plants, it's a wonderful thing to add, and it doesn't have to just be in the spring or the fall. You can add it along the way.
Is there anything that you shouldn't put in the compost?
Um, so if you're a beginner, you may want to avoid meat or dairy or seafood, and just kind of get your feet wet. Understand the composting process. Make sure that you're successful in making compost that doesn't attract any critters or that doesn't smell bad. But for an experienced composter, those are okay to add to the compost bin. There are things that you don't want to compost, like perhaps your cat waste. Dog waste can be composted, but you want to keep that in a separate bin away from your vegetable garden. But generally, anything that was once alive, ourselves included, can all be composted, right? And that's kind of crazy to think about, but we're organic, we are a living, breathing thing, and so anyhow, just kind of food for thought there. But yeah, I mean, people think that compost is just your fruits and vegetable scraps and your coffee grounds. But somebody texted me the other day and said, "Hey, can I put cheese puffs in the compost?" And yeah, those could be composted too. So it's that kind of stuff that can also go on the compost bin. So I literally say anything that was once alive in whatever form it might be, if it's your M&Ms or cupcakes or your banana peels, that's all eligible to go in the compost bin.
You pretty much just answered my next question. Like, is there anything that you should compost that nobody would expect? I guess,
well,
like a good example.
I mean, hopefully you eat them because they're pretty good. But, the one thing that people don't think about is their toilet paper rolls or paper towel rolls, napkins or paper towels. If you don't have any chemicals on them, those are fine to go in the compost. And the biggest one is pizza boxes. They don't get recycled. They have grease on them. I don't know a ton about the recycling process, what happens down the road there with that, but I know that they're not good to put in the recycling bin, but they can be composted, even with all of the grease on them, perfectly fine to put in there.
That's surprising.
It's one that people don't think of. So, aside from that, you may also want to keep, any diseased plants. That's probably a good one to keep out of the compost bin, especially if your compost does not reach a high enough temperature to kill off pathogens. You don't want to risk the chance of spreading disease to other plants that are healthy.
That's really good to know. So now let's talk about Kona. Like, how does Kona Compost work?
So it's, nice and simple. I kind of joke and say that I am your organic trash lady, right? Trashing quotes. But it's super simple. People sign up. We're a subscription service. So you sign up for a compost subscription. Folks receive a 5-gallon bucket and a list of what is accepted into the compost bin. And you put it out by your driveway. We come by, empty it, and kind of rinse and repeat. They get the bucket back. We take all the dirty work off of their plate. We have a partner farm and another partner that we work with to recycle and make compost. And the nice thing about it, and we're actually wrapping up our compost subscription give back now, or compost give back program rather. in order to kind of close that loop, we do give compost back to our customers if they want it. If not, we're going to donate it to somebody who can use it. But it's just kind of a nice way to see like full circle. This started as one thing, it ended as another. And, most people will end up putting it in their garden.
This is so amazing. So how can others in their community also start initiatives like that?
So, yeah, I would, check to see if there's, other folks around you that are doing it, and reach out to them and talk to them and say, hey, what did you do? That's kind of where I started. I wasn't exactly sure. So I reached out to a bunch of folks in the composting community, and I just took a chance, right? And I said, let's give this a try. I set myself up as an LLC. Went through all the right channels to make sure that the business was properly launched, and really got the word out there through social media, through farmers markets, through friends and family, to help spread the word. And I'd say for anybody that's wanting to do this, just go for it. What's the worst that could happen? You make a difference at the end of the day, and it's all good.
Can you expand to California, the rest of the nation?
I mean, so in California, there are a bunch of composters out there, Compostable LA and LA Compost, and there's a bunch up and down the state. There's actually a wonderful community of what we are community composters, and there's a lot of companies that are existing and other ones that are kind of popping up pretty frequently. So composting is becoming a bit more mainstream, a bit of a movement, which is really exciting to watch along the way. So, I'm super grateful that people are going, oh, I know what composting is. And, we're like, hey, I compost at home already. And hey, job well done. That's great. So, I would have to take a wild guess that there will be more companies popping up as we get going here. And, we're really grateful to be doing this. So
this is so awesome. So you also co-founded the Buck County Seed Share. So tell us about, how does seed sharing work?
Yeah. So my partner, Jean Kuhn, and I founded the Bucks County Seed Share last year. It was an idea that we were talking about on how to promote gardening and share seeds within our community. And so for the past 9 months, we had been collecting seeds, developing a program, found a partner library that was gracious enough to host our library of seeds. And we launched in February with, a line out the library door, which was so exciting. And our mission is to give seeds to community members so that they can grow vegetables, they can grow native plants, herbs, fruits, and really keep things local, right? There's nothing better than going to your backyard and going to pick, tomatoes or flowers. And so we really wanted to make that accessible to folks and talk about, all of the different things. We're really trying to foster a nice community here locally, to talk about how do you grow these things? How do you compost? How do you start seeds? And also the importance of native plants, right? So plants that are indigenous to whatever area you're in our case, Southeast Pennsylvania. Because I look at things in a pretty holistic way, and know that our pollinators need to be supported. Our caterpillars need to be supported. And it's going to start with plants that are going to host their life cycle, and they'll pollinate other things like our fruits and vegetables. And they play a really important role in our lives, whether we realize it or not. So, for anybody going, ew, a bug, reframe that and say, hey, thanks for being here. That's really our mission, is to give seeds away, to teach gardening practices, and really talk about how, we all can introduce a bit more of regenerative agriculture in our own homes. So, we're excited. It's well received, and we're hoping to, sell out of seeds by the end of the season here. So we'll see how that goes.
This is so cool. We do have one question that
Sure.
one of our audience posted, would composting be a solution for food packaging waste, not including plastic, if that's too absurd?
Yeah, so plastics, unfortunately are just not good for much of anything, but, especially in being recycled, and we have too much plastic waste as is.
Right.
But there is compostable packaging, which, is a bit of a step up, I think, from plastics, but, I always think that there's a better solution, where, you think about when you go to your farmer's market. All right. If you have a local farmer's market, you're going to bring your own bag. You just put the vegetables in the bag and that's it. No waste. So, for me, I think that while the compostable packaging is a okay solution, it's not the solution. I think that, reusing what you have and really thinking about, what that packaging looks like, if any at all. How can we do a little bit better there? But it's a good start.
Right. We also always think about when it comes to life cycle costs, even for these compostable or these kind of packaging, even though it's a one step up, but you still have to take the energy to produce them, to degrade them.
Right.
I mean, it's a whole process. It's still really unclear how much greenwashing there is versus, you actually just like, hey, don't use it to start with and use whatever you have is reusable.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that, we as humans have enough of whatever it is that's already available, right? We don't need new stuff. We've got it all. And, so I like to see that there are like bulk refillery stores that are popping up where you can just go and, get your oatmeal or your grains and you bring your own glass jar, right? Which could be infinitely recycled. So I'm hoping that, we're going to gradually migrate towards more of that mindset. Because we just don't need any more things.
Absolutely. So this is such great information. So thank you so much for joining us today. And then thank you everyone for joining, and be sure to follow Kona Compost at Kona Compost. And if you live near Pennsylvania County, make sure you sign up with Kona Compost. Get everything.
Yeah,
compost.
thanks. Yeah.
So
yeah, that would be great. Yeah, it is totally my pleasure. And thank you so much for having me. If folks have questions, feel free to reach out. I will happily, follow up on any thoughts or ideas or questions that anyone might have. And I hope everyone enjoyed.
Yeah, and check out konacompost.com. And then we'll also have all the information in our LinkedIn bio. And then you can tap on the post promoting this IG Live.
All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Heather.
All right. You take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.